Hi, I'm Narda Butler, a candidate for the master's degree at Boise State's EdTech program. This is my reflection video in which I share with you what I've learned. In the 8th grade, I took an aptitude test on which I proclaimed that I wanted to be a farmer. The returned results suggested that farming was not the appropriate vocation for me, rather that I should look into law. The years unfolded, and I went into teaching. First studying agricultural education, then science education once I got married. 25 years of hands-on motherhood ensued, during which we moved our family to Alaska. I taught my children as a homeschool mom, and I taught others as a certificated freelance teacher. At 48, I decided to pursue my long-suppressed desire, and I bought 2 sheep. At 49, I re-entered college as my youngest went off for her freshman year at Washington State. I began this new phase not as a lawyer, but as a wife, a mother, a shepherdess, and as a teacher. My interest in pursuing an EdTech degree grew from an increasing use of the internet over which to deliver my coursework for what I called then my mid-distance science classes for homeschoolers. I thought my effort to learn to develop websites, to use new software and online tools, and to engage students more effectively might be more efficient if I actually went to school to learn. And that has truly been the case. I've gained skills, yes, but more importantly, I've explored theories of learning and expanded my vision for how to promote deeper learning among my students in what I now know is called a blended learning environment. This video synthesizes my experience at Boise State using a structure for teaching that I have adopted as an integration and application of what I've learned. Join me as I take you down that road through explanation and demonstration. During the past 3 years of study, I have developed my own understanding of learning that can best be summarized as a 5-point process: motivation, instruction, participation, application, and finally, integration. It is through this lens that I will explore how my Boise State EdTech journey has changed my teaching. Sugatra Mitra conducted the now famous hole-in-the-wall experiment in India, where he placed a computer into a wall in one of the slums. What he observed can be summed up in one sentence: children learn to do what they want to learn to do. And I found this to be absolutely true and key to development of instruction. Traditionally, students' motivation came from a desire to perform well on tests, but I don't think that is as true today. It is our job as educators to cue into that which students care about in order to motivate them to learn. The ARCS model, which I developed in the instructional design course in EdTech 503, is a great example of this. This represents the first time I looked beyond asking an intriguing question about the topic, "Have you ever wondered?" and launched right into instruction. I really had to dig to discern that which might make this topic interesting and relevant to high schoolers. I chose to include things such as familiarity with a local area. I chose to personalize it by asking, how close is this location to your own house? And I connected it with the course goals and with their own personal experiences. Another way of creating a need or want to learn that I used was presenting a real-life problem for students to solve following instruction, such as in the Chemistry Solutions course I developed for EdTech 512. At the start of each module, I present a scenario that will be the problem for the culminating lab. In this way, they have some motivation to acquire the knowledge they need to solve the problem. Here's your scenario. Your grandfather has gone into the hospital and is undergoing testing. He is feeling a bit peaked and he's not his chipper self. One thing the doctors have identified right away is that he is dehydrated and running a fever. They decide to order rehydration fluid along with something to lower his temperature. One of the keys to the effectiveness of this IV treatment is that it needs to be isotonic with human body fluids.
You have a book that includes a table for freezing point depression for medications, but what can the pharmacist use to be sure the freezing point matches that of blood, sweat, and tears? That's your task to solve. Good luck.
The second aspect relevant to motivation is being clear about the objectives of the lesson. Through Boise State's education, I learned that objectives are not the right because you have to hurdle of lesson preparation, but rather they give me, the instructor, a real honed in focus on the instructional content. I learned to ask the question, what do I want my students to be able to do with this instruction to guide my development of objectives? The learning task map that I developed for the chemistry solution course is one example of this. At the very top of each of the modules is the what do I want my students to do objective, with all the sub-objectives listed underneath. This has changed the way I teach. Being a constructivist at heart, putting it into practice through the teaching of science has been challenging. Learning to engage students in the inquiry process begins with that motivation piece. The second step in my process of learning is instruction. This is the meat of the learning process. I have 6 artifacts to share to illustrate key aspects of instruction. Number 1, the delivery method matters. In my Alaska Studies website, I wanted to create a clean interface and employ the principles of CARP in presenting the information. I also wanted students to focus on instructional content and not worry about navigation, so every page has 2 means with which to navigate. I also used emphasis on the navigation buttons to let students know where they were in the course on every page. Number 2, structure and format is important for students. When I introduced new types of learning tools, I also included tutorial videos. I used a linear progression in the development of my Alaska web quest, which I created for 502. Students are given clear instruction on how to proceed with the lesson, which involves quite a bit of wandering around the internet. The sequential structure built into the format prevents them from getting lost while wandering or frustrated with what they need to do. Mayer's theory of multimedia learning makes clear that multisensory delivery is vital. In this tutorial about chemical reactions that I made for my Chemistry Solutions course in 512, I used both auditory and visual input to communicate instruction. What's happening in this reaction is that we started with silver sulfide, and then we added aluminum, and it went to silver metal plus aluminum sulfide. Number 4, consistent with constructivist theory, I learned how to develop instruction that guides students into the construction of knowledge. Their personal exploration of Alaska through the Alaska Virtual Tour is one such example. It is a guided exploration in that there is a worksheet to complete, but allows for student choice as to where to go to find the information. Which brings me to the next aspect of instructional delivery that I learned is important: learner choice. Learner choice enhances learning in that it allows students to self-select what they believe is important for themselves. I've used this principle in the development of a branching review quiz that I made using Adobe Captivate for my 523 course. Finally, collaborative learning is a powerful tool. I've used online forums with students. I've required collaboration on Google Documents, and I also created a collaborative bulletin board for the Alaska Studies and IT Literacy course. Here, students all contribute to one project using the online tool Padlet. In summary then, good online instruction should provide an efficient delivery model, a defined structure and format. It should include multisensory elements. It should provide inquiry-based content, It should allow for learner choice, and it should include collaborative activities. The fourth point in my own learning process is participation. Participation includes those activities that encourage practice with the information presented in instruction. It is here that formative assessments are appropriate to help students understand their level of mastery. In my 511 course, I created an online tutorial that uses inquiry methods to provide instruction, then provides an opportunity for students to practice with solving problems with the equation that they derived. One of the drawbacks of practice can be the requirement to complete untold number of problems for a skill that the student has already mastered. One way to respect a learner's abilities is to give them choice. As I mentioned in instruction, choice is an integral part of the learning process. And in this tutorial for 511, I give students choice as to whether to continue on to practice or whether to come back later. Sometimes visual support helps students practice a skill. I recreated the steps for performing different sewing stitches in this presentation for a group of preteens in my sewing class. Each slide gives step-by-step instructions and then is followed by a slide illustrating when to use the stitch. Finally, self-assessment through practice is an excellent learning tool. I used Zebra Zaps, an online tool that outputs flash learning objects, to create this quick concept check that gives immediate feedback. No, in a decomposition reaction, a compound breaks down or decomposes into singular elements or compounds. AB goes to A plus B. There is no displacement. Try again. Participation is the practice that follows instruction. The fourth point in my learning process is application. Application is the point where learners answer the question, what do I do with this information? Application is tied to summative assessment in my mind. The culminating labs and chemistry solutions course is one such example. Students are asked to use the information in a real-life scenario to which they are introduced at the beginning of the lesson. During the culminating lab for Module 1, you will be asked to select an appropriate solvent for a given solute to create a solution. And this is the scenario. You work for a salad dressing company. Your boss is trying to create stock solutions to use as a base for a number of different dressings that'll be customized by adding flavorings or herbs. Outside of my regular domain as a high school science teacher, the evaluation project was completed to give a local nonprofit board information with which to make future decisions. This is another form of the application learning process in that it provides a guide for informing them about what they should do with the information. It really is the collection and analysis of data, with the primary purpose being to inform a specific audience regarding future decisions. Application should reflect the deeper learning that an instructor is striving for on the part of the learners. It should help the learners answer the how and why they learned about a topic and should form the basis for summative assessment. Integration. This is the fifth point, and it's the unseen piece. How well do students recall the information 2 years later? How do they use it? How well is it really integrated into their own personal internal schemas such that it can be retrieved for building future connections? That is the goal of the teaching that I do. I believe the foundations for creativity are built upon by how well students are able to store and retrieve information for the sole purpose of building brand new, unique connections. This piece can only exist with the prerequisites of motivation, instruction, Participation and application being intentionally crafted and delivered. And this is what I have learned at Boise State. Over the past 3 years, I learned how to present instruction more effectively, to employ theories of learning in the construction of lessons, and to utilize a variety of tools in so doing. Over the past 3 years, much about me has not changed. I am still a wife, still a mother, still a shepherdess, but now I am a teacher with skills.